Soul Redeemer, Book 2, Chapter 26b, Sisters. Gus turned to Megan. "How do you know this about the human programming?" Megan answered, "Peter. He loves to brag." Gus asked, "This is probably a long shot, but did Peter ever happen to mention what the trigger would be that would activate the day of purification program in the humans?" She closed her eyes as if trying to locate that information somewhere in her mind. When she opened her eyes, she said, "It has something to do with sound waves and frequencies and elves that ride on microwaves." Sam snorted. "What land of make-believe do you come from?" Gus answered, "It's legit, actually. She's talking about ELF, or extremely low frequency waves, that are sent out via microwave emitters and are used to control people's thoughts." Megan raised her chin haughtily and addressed Sam. "Do you want me to continue telling you what I know, or do you want to do this on your own?" "I'm sorry, Your Highness. Please continue," he said as he gave a mock bow of his head. She nodded. "Some people have implants in their brains or other places in their bodies that are like a high-frequency receiver and something else I can't remember. But when their handlers send the signal out by remote, their brains are stimulated in certain areas, which triggers preset programming. Certain frequencies produce certain programmed responses, allowing them to be controlled from long distances." Sam said, "The tech team disabled a device in your brain. I'm assuming that was a receiver." Megan said yes. "However, my computer chip was much more complex than those found in humans. I mean other humans." She smiled at the knowledge that she was actually part of their race. "While theirs is a simple receiver, mine was connected with the main computer at the clone center. If I needed info that had not been downloaded into my head, I had limited access to certain programs. My chip was like having an iPad inside my brain, only with more functions. It monitored, recorded, and reported all of my body responses and chemical reactions. My computer lenses were a part of this system, and they not only fed the computer visual intake, but they also visually gave me simple and complex technical info, such as the temperature of a room or the names and personal information of any specific person, or pretty much anything that can be accessed online. I could also hear sounds most people can't. Anyhow, it's the reason I was able to function so quickly with Nicole's memories that Dorothy downloaded in me." Jake said, "That sounds like a sci-fi TV show I've seen where they have technology like that in the future." Gus answered, "I'm not surprised. The media will often display such things in an enticing story to prepare and desensitize us to things that are already going on, so that when it is introduced into society, we will think that it's great stuff and will readily accept it without questioning the full effects and consequences of it." Nicole was still considering what Megan had said about memories. "Does that mean that I have a chip in my brain?" she asked, suddenly worried. She hated the thought of things being implanted in her body. "No, you're too old for this technology to have been implanted in you. They gain access to your memories by stimulating the part of your brain with electrodes, and then they capture and upload the memories to their computer system," Megan explained, verifying what Joel had told her. "Well, I guess for once I'm glad for my age," Nicole laughed nervously. Sam rubbed the stubbly whiskers on his chin with his thumb, which indicated he was deep in thought. "I've often wondered what was behind all these mass murders like school shootings." "I've heard talk of this," Megan said. "At least some of the shooters have had this device in their brain and have been programmed to respond in this way when activated by the frequency. They just change gears and proceed with the program plan. Then afterwards they either kill themselves as a part of the suicide programming, or they don't understand and can't explain why they just did what they did." She shook her head. "These types of murders have just been practiced for the great plan." Sam considered things out loud. "There's no way we can disable each person's receiver or find and destroy each remote." Jake had leaned forward, deep in thought as well. "Maybe we could change the frequency of the signal without anyone knowing, so that when it goes out it wouldn't trigger the destruction programming." Sam looked at Jake. "Great idea! You're starting to get the hang of this," he said, and clapped him on the back. Sam ran his hand over his head again. If that could work, it would at least buy us some time to figure out how to disable the devices in the people's brains. Of course, we don't know what reactions would correspond to that frequency, but at least the consequences wouldn't be on such a massive scale. Gus said. There is a possibility that a large magnetic field released into the atmosphere could disable the sodium-lithium powered high-frequency receiver transducers with multi-range discharge capacitors. That's what those things were called, Megan exclaimed. Gus continued. The receivers have a very small wire that vibrates. This vibration is the catalyst that activates the device. There is a chance that by creating a large electrical current in the atmosphere, it would become magnetized for a brief period of time, which, if powerful enough, could move the wire in each receiver enough to disable them. How would we do that? Sam asked. I don't know much about this, but I know enough to understand that that would require some serious electricity. Gwen towers, Gus said. There are enough of them throughout the United States that if we activated them all in unison and increased the megahertz as high as possible for a calculated time period, we may succeed in creating a large enough electrical current to produce the necessary changes in the magnetic field. Jake interjected. I thought Gwen towers were just conspiracy theory rumors. Sam asked. And your point is? Look around, buddy. We're in the middle of a conspiracy theory. You can check it out for yourself later, but they're for real. He was quiet a moment as he contemplated Gus's suggestion. What about the ELF waves? They can be transmitted through the towers as well, can't they? Yes, but if we can access the computer system and find the frequencies assigned to the day of purification, when we infiltrate the Gwen system, we can bypass those frequencies, Gus explained. Sam said, interesting. Turnabout is fair play. The very tools that the government is using to control the population we could use against them and beat them at their own game. But I wonder what the consequences of that would be. Good question. There could be chaos on every level, mental problems, severe weather changes. However, the question still remains, what are the consequences of not doing it? Gus countered. You've got a point there, Sam agreed. He leaned back in his chair. Break time. I'm going to inform Joel of our options. Be back here in 5. Jake and Nicole stepped outside and looked up at the late evening sky. Even though there was still a hint of light, the stars were so vivid and bright in the mountain air that they were already visible. They don't seem to know that our world is undergoing a dramatic change, Jake said. He had always loved the night sky. Even if all this works out, our lives will never be the same, will they? Nicole could hear the grief in his voice, and in a voice that was constricted with the effort of holding back her own tears, she replied, No, but my love for you will never change, except to grow deeper. She turned into his embrace. And I can hardly imagine that. I love you so much now that being away from you feels like torture. No matter where we end up when this is done, you are my home, Jake. And as long as I can be with you, I'll be okay. I wish time would stand still, Jake said as he held her in his arms. But it never does. I think the key, Jake, is that no matter what happens in the world, if we have love for God and for each other, we can be content. Hey, you two, you're 1 minute late, Megan called out of the back door. When they were all seated at the table again, Sam began. So we are going to attack this problem on several fronts. On the human front, we need to access Gwen and cell phone satellites. Oh, right, Gus exclaimed. That was almost too obvious to see. Everybody has a smartphone which can be controlled and commanded to emit specific high frequencies. No worries, Sam said. Joel thought of that, and he's taking care of those 2 assignments. He looked at Gus and said, I want you with Nicole. The 2 of you are hitting the clone center, assuming that's the location of the main computer system. He looked at Megan. She nodded in affirmation, and he continued. The first priority will be to change the frequency of the sound waves, as Jake suggested, as a failsafe. Next, disable any remotes. And last, destroy the clone computer program. And I want the dates for the days of release and purification ASAP. Megan said, I don't know who Joel is, but I'm assuming he's your superior. Sam nodded and she asked, "He understands that we don't know the ramifications of shutting down the clone programming?" "Yes, he does," Sam answered, "and will be as prepared as possible to deal with those ramifications." He looked at Gus and Nicole. "Joel is sending a computer virus for you to install that should terminate communication between the computer system and the clones. Nicole, you'll carry the virus with you in case Gus can't get in. However, it would be best for him to gain access and to assist you. Joel is also issuing a militia rescue team to be on standby, depending on the situation. However, we are also issuing a rescue team for the clones if that should happen to work out. Megan, Nicole is going to need passwords. Are you aware of any?" "The only thing that comes to my mind is a little ditty that Peter has been repeating quite often lately. I don't know if it's applicable to this or not, but it goes, 'Awake, awake, O sleeper, the day of Sisera is come. O prevail, ye hammer and nail, Jael shall be no more. Rise up, ye mighty men, the day of Sisera is come. Take up the armor, the battle array, revenge and judgment is this day.'" Nicole prayed, "Lord, please show us if there are any code words here." Jake said, "In the Bible, Sisera is the commander of the Canaanite army. After being defeated by Israel, he took refuge in a seemingly hospitable home of Heber and his wife Jael. Jael killed Sisera by hammering a tent peg through his head." "It sounds like Sisera or the clones want to take revenge on Jael or Christians," Megan said. "I wonder if the password is Sisera." "It's definitely worth a try," Sam said. "I'll have a decoder standing by to help with that. We may not be able to shut everything down, but we can sure minimize the effects on the general public." Gary came bringing some dinner that he had picked up in town. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there were two very large men at the cafe asking questions about the power outage and about the inn." "That would be Darth and Raj," Megan said. "They're here to pick me up." "Okay, then, here we go," Sam exclaimed as he looked at Nicole. "The contact lenses were dropped off earlier, so let's get you wired up." "Wait," Nicole exclaimed. "You mean Darth is Invader?" Megan looked confused. "I don't know what you mean." "Didn't you watch Star Wars?" "No." "Oh, but you did," she said as she thought a moment, recalling Nicole's memory of Darth Vader. "He doesn't look anything like the one in the movie. Doesn't sound like him either." Then she said, "But he is just as mean," she added with a smile, as if she thought she had done well to find a point of commonality between the two. "Oh, great," Nicole said as she looked up toward heaven. Megan added, "Something I didn't tell you is that I was supposed to kill Jake and hide his body if something went wrong." Every eye turned to look at Megan. "What?" Nicole asked. "Why kill Jake?" "Because if I couldn't make him believe that I was you, he could become a threat." Sam thought for a moment, then said, "Well, that might just be in our favor." "Sam!" Nicole gasped. "I'm not saying that we're going to kill Jake. I'm saying that Megan's disappearance can be attributed to hiding Jake's body in the woods. It's a perfect setup for us, actually. We'll get Nicole situated, and then she can go back into town and contact Damon, who will tell her that the guys are in town to get her, and then they can take her back with them." "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Jake disagreed. "I don't want Nicole to go near those guys." Nicole covered Jake's hands with hers. "It'll be okay, sweetheart. I'm prepared for this. And Sam and Gus will be shadowing me, right, guys?" She looked to see them both nodding their heads in agreement. "With the lenses and wires, we'll be able to see and hear everything that Nicole sees and hears," Sam assured him, "and she'll be able to hear me so I can give her intel as needed." "This technology is unbelievable, Hun," Nicole said, "not to mention the angels that are helping us out. I haven't had a chance to tell you—" Sam interrupted her. "Later, Nicole. Jake, you have to let us do what we need to so that she can come home permanently. We cannot guarantee that everything will work out perfectly or that Nicole will be free from all harm. However, this is where faith and obedience allow the Holy Spirit to do his work." Jake still didn't look convinced. Sam said, "We'll do our best to protect your wife, but she's right about the angels. God has been and will continue to send help from heaven. Will you trust him, Jake?" Jake lowered his head. "I don't really have a choice, do I?" Nicole sighed. "Sam, I can't do this if Jake isn't in agreement. One thing I've learned over the years is that he is my spiritual covering, And if I act in defiance or rebellion against him, it's the same as disobeying God." She turned to Jake. "Up until now, I haven't had a choice to submit to you or not in this matter. But as of this moment, I do, and I choose to surrender to whatever you decide." Jake bowed his head in silent thought. All eyes were on him as the balance of this mission rested on his decision. After a moment, he lifted his head, and in an anguished tone he asked, "Is there any other way?" "I could go," Megan offered. Sam looked at her through squinted eyes as he considered the thought for about 2 seconds. "Thanks, but no thanks. You have not been deprogrammed or tested yet, and this is too important." "Brother," he said as he looked Jake in the eye, "I wish I could think of another way, but I'm sorry, I can't." "Okay, then I have to trust God will take care of you when I can't, Nicole," Jake consented. She wrapped her arms around him and quietly said, "Thank you, hun. I know this is what I need to do." Sam pulled his chair over next to Nicole and motioned for her to be still so that he could begin the process of planting 3 undetectable bugs on her. "Megan," he said as he worked, "I do appreciate your offer, and if you're willing, we could use your help." Megan nodded. "Sure. What can I do?" "You can help me listen and watch. You may be able to provide important information that will help Nicole along the way." "I can do that," Megan agreed. "There's probably something I should tell you now, though, Nicole. Peter likes women. I sleep with him sometimes." Sam had opened the box that held the new contact lenses and was just getting ready to put the first one in Nicole's left eye when she pushed his hand away and turned to Megan with a disgusted look on her face. "There's no way that I'll sleep with that beast." Even Sam turned to look at Megan. "You mean you used to sleep with him, as in past tense?" "Yes, that's what I mean," Megan affirmed. Jake got up and walked angrily over to the sink and looked out the window. "Can I withdraw my decision to let Nicole go?" Megan said, "I'm sure you can manage to stay out of his bed, but I just thought you should know so that you can be prepared. When we are in public, he treats me very professionally. You just need to make sure that you're never alone with him for long if possible." Gus had begun the activation process on the laptop, and Sam turned Nicole's face back towards him so that he could put in the first contact lens. In a preteen-like voice, Nicole said, "You really don't have to worry, Jake. I can take care of that creep. I'm really good at a lot of things. You should have seen me drive. We outran—" "Ouch!" "Sit still and shut up, Zira. You can tell him about it later. For now, just relax." "Okay, but sheesh, you didn't have to kick me," she pouted. "Zira? Who's Zira?" Jake asked as he turned back toward the table. "Long story that'll have to wait for another time," Sam said as he placed the second lens over her right eye. "Now blink." Nicole blinked. Gus was watching the computer screen. "We've got eyes and ears." Jake and Megan both got up and stood beside Gus. They watched the screen and saw what Nicole was seeing. "I'll go get everybody so they can see how this works," the adult voice Nicole said. They heard her speak and watched her walk out of the kitchen and into the den. They saw that Gary was asleep on the couch, Casey was reading, and Liz was working on a quilt. Sam told Jake to push the talk button and say something to Nicole. He said, "Nicole, go tickle Gary's feet." She smiled and walked over and did exactly that. They listened and watched as Gary jumped up from his sleep, discombobulated, and they all laughed. They heard Nicole ask where Deanne was, and Liz's answer. She went home to get dinner for Ray, and then they all came traipsing into the kitchen and agreed that that was pretty amazing technology. But the light-hearted banter ended when Sam said, "Okay, let's get this show on the road." Gary called them to gather in a huddle so that they could pray over them, and then Casey and Liz hugged Nicole. "We'll all take turns praying for you so that you'll have round-the-clock coverage. Remember that when you start to get anxious." "That means more to me than you can know," Nicole said as she hugged them one last time. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news again," Megan said rather seriously, "but you have to kill Jake so that when they ask you if you took care of him, you can assure them that you did." Everybody looked at her with incredulous looks on their faces, except for Nicole. "Oh, thank you for reminding me." She quickly positioned her right hand in the shape of a gun and pointed it at Jake. Bang, bang, she said, and then she blew the invisible smoke from the barrel of a handgun that she had just put back in its invisible holster. Jake just looked up toward the sky and then back at the sisters. Oh, Lord, help us all. You have to fall down, Nicole and Megan both said at the same time. They looked at each other in serious agreement, then back at Jake, who was just still standing there. If you don't fall down, I won't be able to tell Darth and Raj that I killed you because dead people don't stay standing, Nicole said. Jake decided to give them a grand dying performance, to which they all laughed and clapped. He opened his eyes and said, "Thank you," and then closed them again. Sam touched Nicole's arm. "It's time, Nicole. You'll have to take Jake's car and go to the inn. Gus will follow you and wait until you're picked up, and then he'll tail you at a safe distance to the airport. He'll be on your plane because they won't recognize him. Megan and I will head out after you're picked up, and we'll take the next flight to Chicago and should be there soon after you. We'll not be able to communicate while we're in the air, but we'll check on you as soon as possible. Gus will be able to communicate with you, but will do so only if necessary. Jake, you should be safe here, at least for the night. I'm going to have a man pick you up tomorrow and take you to a safe house, though, just for good measure." It was time to say goodbye. Megan hugged Nicole. "You'll be in my prayers too, sis. I know you can do this, and I'll help you all I can." Nicole smiled at this surprised sister. "Thank you. God be with you too." She looked at her husband. "I can't even think about saying goodbye to you again. It hurts too much." She ran into his arms and gave him a big hug, and then she turned and ran from the room before her heart failed her and her legs turned to jelly.